This is broken news on the Fight Game Media Patreon, but we're also putting this on YouTube. We're putting it in the free feed. And I know I said that I wasn't going to do that, but I think the story is big enough to where we do need to do that. But it's going to the Patreon first. It'll be up in the Patreon first. No commercials, none of that stuff for everyone in the Patreon. But the reason why I have this specific guest on, Big D, is because I don't know if I'm sure you remember, but if we go back to like 2011 when CM Punk was doing that Summer of Punk stuff in
The pipe
WWE,
bomb.
and you were telling me, because you were watching ROH, or you had watched ROH, and you were saying how, the Summer of Punk goes back to ROH and before he came into WWE. And so I thought about that. So we, just to bury the lead here, CM Punk is back in WWE. And the way that they did it was absolutely fantastic. And we'll talk about that in a second. But the reason I had you in mind is because when his face showed up on screen, for whatever reason, my mind flashed back to podcasts that you and I were doing back in 2011. So just even conversations we were having back then. So that's why I wanted you on. You are somebody, whenever we talk about the pipe bomb, whenever we talk about these kind of surprise moments, I think of you, and you immediately messaged me after the show was over too. So it worked out perfectly. So first off, did you think that this was happening before it actually happened?
No, I think well, it's funny because your boy Dave said it wasn't going to happen, but that was a month ago. So he's probably going to get crapped on for this, and he shouldn't be, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Triple H himself said in the post-show press conference this was a last-minute decision. I was thinking, I was trying to figure out when he came out, right, when this was finalized, because it had to be last minute, but I thought back, because I remember hearing that they were going to do AJ Styles against Roman at a Saudi, and they were going to do Seth and Drew at WrestleMania. So when they moved Seth and Drew to Saudi, I was like, well, that's interesting. I guess they're going to hold off on the feud or do a rematch or something. And I was trying to, in my head, see if WWE's recent storyline changes have affected this. But no. Triple H himself said that that he had just got this resolved or whatever, finalized recently. And Sean Ross Sapp said that CM Punk told one person that he had an hour-long conversation with Triple H. And the thing is this, bro, we've been around, we've seen it. There were guys who we thought would never come back. Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, Ultimate Warrior, Bruno Sammartino. These are guys who, oh no, they'll never work with Vince ever again. And then look what happened. Even Hall and Nash had that reputation for a while. And then look. So CM Punk is the latest. Now, I do respect the fact that Triple H and CM Punk talked like grown men and resolved it like adults. That I respect, and I like that a lot. But no, I was not expecting it. And the fact that they did it so perfectly with the copyright logo and then the music and that place. I have a buddy of mine who was at the show who said it sounded like a nuke was dropped.
Wait, what does that even mean?
A very loud explosion.
Okay.
Look,
so
the
when
loudest,
he came out, it was loud. It was loud in the arena.
When Punk came out, yeah. I mean, dude, I'll tell you what, I felt that in Detroit because I was at Ford Field for SummerSlam. When LA Knight came out, I was getting concessions and it felt like the whole place was blowing up. Like it was crazy. But the biggest one was probably the Hardys at WrestleMania in Orlando. Do you remember that?
That was good. That was
massive in the building. That place was rumbling.
So from what I don't have any background. I don't have any way to verify this, but it sounds like probably finalized within the last several days or whatever, and maybe the initial conversation is a little bit longer than that. But I want to commend them because this was the easiest rumor was him showing up at the show, right? And this was not scheduled like that when they booked this building because he was working for the other company
right
at the time. So they made it happen in a matter of a short amount of time. Since
timing is everything.
Since he left AEW, And, you know, for the moment, I think the moment was fantastic. I think the surprise was fantastic, and we'll break down the surprise in a second. But what I wanted to say is, even if this sort of is a short stay and, you know, he has the same issues and, you know, he kind of overstays his welcome, like, this moment, you can never take away this moment, just like you could never take away
The first dance.
in AEW in the first dance. Like, those are fantastic moments, and he has been a part of 2 of the biggest ones in the past several years. Cody at WrestleMania was another giant one. So, commend WWE for it because, like you said, the way that he left, I mean, he basically flipped off everybody on the way out, and in some instances, some people would may say rightfully so, but you remember when, you know, they were like, "Oh," Triple H is like, "Yeah, you know, don't worry about it, me and you at Mania," and Punk was sort of took offense to that. He's like, "I don't wanna work against you," you know, like that whole thing, and it's kinda, you know, disrespectful, but it's wrestling.
Well, I mean, that's the funniest thing is Punk spent the last 2 years trashing WWE when he was in AEW. I mean, when Tony bought the Ring of Honor tape library, he's over here crying like, "I'm glad Tony has my matches," and I'm just like, every chance he could take to take a knock at WWE. And now look, I was watching the show with Carol, and Carol was like, "That hypocrite." I'm like, this wrestling, you know, this is always like this. You know what I mean?
So, the funniest thing, and this is the aftermath of what happened. By the way, there's an awesome, Triple H and CM Punk photo that
And
Triple
it's
H already
real.
put on
It's
his.
not AI. It's
Not
not
AI.
AI. Yeah, it's
But,
real.
you know, the rumor is that Drew McIntyre was pissed off. I think that is, I'm gonna guess that's storyline.
Seth
Uh,
was pissed. Seth, there was footage that was taken from fan cameras of
I saw
Seth,
it.
like, yeah, being held back. I already was told. I mean, when the show ended, I started getting text messages. This is what I tweeted. I said it was such a big secret that they kept Punk out of the arena and hidden during most of the show so that it would not leak that he was there. And then Sean Ross Sapp, like minutes after I post mine, he posted his report where he said that nobody knew until Punk walked down the hallway. So that tells me that it was like Nick Khan and Triple H and, you know, Bruce probably knew, guys like that.
That, I mean,
But
that's what Triple H said at the press conference. He said it was him and Nick, and TKO had nothing to do with this. It was just between them, and it did come last minute. The thing, the Seth thing and the Drew thing.
well, the Seth and Punk's going to be a match though. That's an upcoming match. We're going to get that match.
Okay, and which is why you know, it's him, it's Seth being good at pro wrestling. He's not.
Of course.
Now there may be some thoughts of like, you know, I don't know, this guy's coming to take my spot. You hear all the old school workers, right? And so you kind of got to stand your ground a little bit. But he sees the opportunity. If it is Seth and Punk, it's a big money match for
Well,
WrestleMania for
it's
him.
because when they asked Seth about it in the interview recently, like maybe actually a few months ago, he said he didn't want CM Punk in WWE because he was cancerous in the locker room. That's what he said. So obviously, all this had to have been worked out. What I want to know is, has somebody checked on Tony? Because I'm a little worried about his mental health tonight, dude. I really am, because look, if I put myself in Tony Khan's shoes, I would not publicly show this, but I would internally be feeling like shit. Just being real with you.
I think
Even if it's for a little while.
if I'm Tony Khan, he probably has already gone through that emotion, understanding what pro wrestling is, being a fan of, you know, how long he's been
True,
a
but
fan.
actually seeing him there and in Chicago, you know what? He was just in Chicago a couple days ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm sure he knew that this was a pretty good possibility, because if he was on the other side, he would do exactly the same thing, right? So, and
That's true.
he did
That's
exactly
true.
the same thing with the first dance and then bringing him back a second time. So, let's actually break down what happened. How did this story come to be? So, the show long storyline for the men's war games was that Randy Orton had not showed up to the building. And so Team Cody was having this discussion. And every time they mentioned that Randy was not yet at the building, like Pavlovian dogs, the crowd would chant for CM Punk. Like
it was on and off all night.
It was putty in their hands, really. It was so perfect. And so, we'd check in every hour or so, and no, Randy's not here yet. Then you'd hear the chants, CM Punk, CM Punk. So the crowd was thinking, okay, is Randy the red herring here? And are we really getting CM Punk in this War Games match? So we get to the match, and at the end of the match, Randy still hadn't shown up. He wasn't in the cages with the dudes. And they do throw us a little bit of a head fake, because when Randy's supposed to come out, Rhea Ripley runs out with the briefcase. And so the fans are like, oh, what's going on here? It was just a head fake, because seconds later, Randy's music plays. He comes out. He doesn't take one bump. He hits a crazy ass RKO on JD McDonough, who they threw from the top of the cage. It was amazing.
He did a bunch of super power slams, quick ones. There was a spot where they teased him attacking Jey Uso, yes. and then Jey Uso saved him from an attack from Drew McIntyre from behind.
And he was telling Jey, like, I remember what happened. I haven't forgotten. And so the baby faces win the match. Cody hits the crossroads on Damian Priest, and they're about to go off air. Like he said, they play the copyright logo, and they zoom to the back of zoom to right where the stage is.
And that's they've been doing that zoom out farewell thing for a while. WrestleMania 10, when they're all holding Bret Hart up in the ring, that show ends with like a zoom out shot, and it fades to black of like the Madison Square Garden. So yeah, we were all putty in their hands.
And all of a sudden the music plays and the crowd goes wild and Punk comes out. So
and it says CM Punk on the Trons.
To me, the brilliance of this thing was creating this idea that Randy Orton may not show up. And then when he does show up, they still went nuts for Randy Orton. So they had
huge pop.
In their mind, they were like, okay, we've forgotten about Punk. It's all about Randy. And then when the match was over, and then it's about Punk again. And so it was like,
this is like all in. This is all out 2021.
Sort of similar to that. Yeah.
Our truth earlier in the show. That was the big return. That was the big. Yeah. Triple H made that joke in the press conference. Let's talk about the big return. Our truth. And everybody started laughing. And then he said that Punk was we talked about it, but yeah.
You know what? That press conference wasn't terrible for once. I actually thought there were some good questions.
Right. Me too. I liked it.
There was the Joshi question. Triple H is like, I had never heard of Joshi until like 3 years ago.
You know why? Because that term stopped being used for a while. Like you could read the old 90s Observers, and he's got a whole section on Joshi, but I don't think he calls it that anymore. It's been like 10 years or 20 years since they've used that phrase.
Yeah. So it was really brilliant the way that they did it. I commend them, because we live in a day and age where information is out there now. I didn't think Punk was coming back, but I thought there was a small inkling when Dave wrote that LA Knight versus Roman Reigns is not in the mix for the Royal Rumble. Now, this is not to say that I think CM Punk is facing Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble.
I don't think so.
But that was the first time my mind went to, I wonder if he is involved. Now, okay, here's the other thing about the CM Punk thing. For those of us who are really, really close to this stuff.
But wouldn't Dave have told you?
Oh, he didn't know. I'm not saying that he didn't know, but he did not know Punk was coming out at the end of the show for sure.
Okay,
I'm sure he heard that there were discussions. I'm sure in his wrestling brain, he was like, this very much makes sense for him to come out. But he did not know that Punk was coming out tonight. At least I don't think so. So, because I was watching it with him. So the thing about it is, those of us who are really close to this stuff, I think I would have been more surprised, or maybe a little bit more fired up, if I didn't see the last few months of Punk in AEW, because he really, really was like a poor coworker in AEW. He was a giant baby. he was a liar. He was calling people who had good information liars and trying to
He was a mess.
He was Donald Trumping his audience for a guy who stands for the things that he says that he stands for. So all of those reasons, I think that, like, again, the way that they did this moment was brilliant. But had he not gone out the way that he went out, I think I would have been even more excited to see him in WWE. And then the hurdle for them is now taking this moment and making this moment mean something, like the Cody moment. Cody comes in, Seth Rollins, they have that great match at WrestleMania, and Cody becomes a top guy through the work. CM Punk comes in as a bigger sort of historical star than Cody Rhodes did when he came back to WrestleMania a couple years ago. But is he willing to, are they going to book him correctly? Is he going to be a workhorse? Who knows of all that stuff? I'm going to guess no. I'm going to guess that he's not going to be wrestling a ton. So that is a different thing that they have to figure out, because what got Cody over was he became the workhorse of the entire company, and there was so much goodwill in him, and they pushed him to the moon. So now you have another guy that you just took from AEW. How do you make sure that that guy is now over again to this fan base when we know some of that history and the fans know a little bit more of the inside stuff these days? So I think that is a challenge. I'm interested to see what happens. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a short stay and he just kind of went out the way that he wanted to go out. Maybe this is just WrestleMania and that's it. But I'm also willing to be open, because I think he really did want to be back in wrestling when he came back to AEW. Now, his body didn't necessarily hold up the way that he wanted it to, so that's another challenge. So they have their work cut out for them, but this is part one of this thing, and I thought it was just fantastic. One of the best things that they've done in recent memory.
I mean, they had to have had a conversation about his behavior. That had to have been part of it, because we know for a fact that WWE kept up with that story. And we know that for a fact because Bruce Pritchard has tried to avoid talking about it on his podcast, but it does come up once in a while. And he usually says something like, well, we're not really interested in other companies, but we did hear about this, so and so. You know, they always say that, but they're paying attention. They're paying attention to what Tony does. I'm not saying that they're taking AEW as a serious threat, but they definitely heard what Punk did. And we know that too, because when Ariel was on that Montreal show earlier this year and TK was tweeting, Ariel revealed on his podcast that everyone in the back was like talking about it. Like, dude, look at this. So the gossip continues in all the locker rooms. Everybody knows what's going on. So I feel like they had to have known everything that Punk did. He told them his side of the story, I'm sure. And they had to have, at some point, I would assume, said, listen, this is not the same thing. We're publicly traded with TKO. Like, we can't play around like this, bro. And maybe he felt from his side that he really believed that the Young Bucks and that Kenny and that Khan were a bunch of children, because they have shown more so, not so much Omega, but the other ones have shown in the past that they can kind of be like that. You know, we've heard stories from different guys. You can believe Jim Cornette. You don't have to. You see Tony losing his mind on Twitter. The point is that maybe from CM Punk's perspective, I'm not saying I feel this way, but maybe Phil Brooks is thinking these guys really are children. And maybe he's going to go and he feels more comfortable being with Triple H and Ari Emanuel than he does with TK. But obviously, that whole "you fired me on my wedding day," that had to be discussed, because that was a thing he had kept talking about. I was at the Mike Johnson interview with him in 2019. Like, we've seen the interview he did with Tony Khan on one of the internet, I forget which one, where he's like having a press conference, and he said, you know, they fired me on my wedding day. So that was definitely something he had to have hammered out. So I think both guys, I would hope, hashed out everything. I would hope.
Well, I don't think the Bucks can be petty in the way that they are without having CM Punk pave the petty pathway, because that's his personality.
Well, yeah, I know.
And so
from his perspective,
it's easy to look at it and go, yeah, now I'm here and that was then, this is now. But that's his personality. So I would say, again, this has been my sort of thesis statement on WWE in of itself, but competition is great.
Yes, it's fun.
If there's no AEW, there's no need for WWE to get Punk or to extend some of these guys like Orton, these
And
older
also,
wrestlers.
I'm glad you said that because it goes both ways. Let's be honest here. Look, I understand that. Look, I've been very critical of Tony Khan and I've been critical of WWE. I know as fans, we obviously have our opinions on what's good and what isn't. But having AEW there, even if AEW sucks, now I don't think AEW sucks right now. I've actually been more into the product than I was earlier in the summer or even before then. I didn't like 2022 that much. There was a lot of it I didn't like. But the point is, if it wasn't for AEW, we would never have gotten Bryan versus Zack Sabre Jr. Like all these great matches that came from like Christian going to AEW. Look at this awesome run we're seeing of him as a heel. Like these are things we wouldn't have seen if it was only WWE. You know what I'm
Mhm,
saying?
mhm.
We would have never seen these things. So you got to have people out there. It's just that I think a lot of fans, what they want is, I think a lot of fans think that now that Triple H is in charge, that they want WWE to go back to being like what NXT was. And even though, like, during the boom NXT, like the black and gold era. And I think that WWE is closer to that than they were with Vince. It's never going to be like that because me personally, bro, I want Adam Cole to go back to WWE and have a run as a top heel. I want Keith Lee to go back to WWE, but that's only because Triple H knew how to book them. And so you understand where I'm coming from. I'm just, the bottom line is, as much as we may want certain guys to work with certain guys, AEW existing opens up the possibility for more guys working with guys they would have never worked with. Does that make sense?
And women as well, because Mercedes is out there. Triple H. I mean, when would you have ever heard the name Julia on a WWE press conference before? But the rumors of her possibly being interested in WWE, and now WWE has an entire faction of Japanese women as one of the top women's factions. So that's pretty cool. So, but let's actually, I just want to get your quick thoughts on the show overall. Out of 10, what would you give this Survivor Series?
I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. I felt like all the matches were pretty good. I didn't think anything was outstanding necessarily, except maybe the main event. However, when you compare this main event to like last year's War Games, I think last year's is probably better because
Yeah,
that drama with
there was
Sami
so much more
Zayn.
drama. Yeah,
Yeah, it was way more drama. But now that being said, I'm not saying this one's not good. It's just that last year was extraordinary. I think the issue with the show was that the non-War Games matches were all extremely predictable. Like nobody on this planet thought that Miz could have had a chance against beating
no, not
Gunther,
at
bro.
all.
Nobody. And Zoe Stark, bro, yeah, they worked hard, but she's not going to beat Rhea Ripley. So ultimately, the show became a bit anticlimactic.
Yeah,
But I did think it was smart when they had Rhea run out with the briefcase before Randy showed up. I was watching, I was like, the match hasn't technically become the match beyond yet. So I guess they could do a match within a match.
yeah.
But it was good stuff. I mean, I liked the show. It's just I didn't think it was the best WWE show, but they haven't had any bad shows this year. Last month was probably the weaker show, but it's all
Yeah,
been pretty
I would
good.
say so too. So I much like you, I was a little bored with the non-War Games matches, and even the women's War Games match. I thought it was fun, but they were doing some stuff where you really, really had to give them the benefit of the doubt, like Io Sky jumping off the cage with
With the trash can
the
over her
trash
head,
can, and
Oscar the Grouch spot.
like Charlotte had been pushed off of the top rope like 45 seconds before Io had actually jumped. So there was some of that stuff, but it was a great moment. John LaRocca and I, we had a conversation about this Miz and Gunther match. I was laughing at these near falls. Like I was like,
They were trying. They really were.
okay, this crowd is buying these near falls. and I'm laughing at them because I know there's 0% chance Gunther is losing this match. So
But if
John thought that it was well done, and I thought it was pretty funny and kind of laughable.
well,
But
that's what I'm saying. If they got the crowd into it, maybe you didn't fall for it. But if they got, and that's a
well,
usually
what does
smart
that
mark
say about the
crowd.
crowd though?
I mean, Chicago's usually a smart mark crowd, but you know what? And you know this. Sometimes you go to shows and you get lost in the show.
Well, and also they're in a little bit, you know, they're packing the thing, so you're gonna grab a few more of
And
your
they
casual.
want to be part of the show, so they want to
That's a
like,
big thing, yeah.
yeah, like it's fun to like 1, 2, oh, like that's fun to do at live shows. But obviously, if we're at home, I mean, then again, I remember I went to, I think I told you this story when I used to go to the sports bar. I remember I was watching the you know, at the sports bar watching the
When
pay per
you
views.
would go to the sports bar and get a Diet Coke.
Yes, a Coke Zero, but yes, and a pitcher, and there was a table next to me, and the guys were chanting, "You can't wrestle," and I looked at him and I go, "He can't hear you." What's the point of doing the claps and a fucking bar? It's so stupid, bro.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
True story.
so the other thing I wanted to mention here for our Patreon users, but also, like I said, this is going to YouTube. This is also going to our free podcast feed, which is you and I are going to come back here monthly. And I think next month, which will be December, we're going to figure out the right time. We'll do a live stream and we're going to talk about the new Sylvester Stallone Netflix documentary. And then we're going to do something that you and I have kind of done in private message over the years, but never on a podcast, is we're going to rank all of the Rocky and Creed movies based on the ones that we want to watch over again, the rewatchability of the films. And so we're going to have that discussion because Creed 3, and I think there's even Creed 4 news
It's
out
been
there.
announced. Yeah, and Michael B. Jordan's the director. That's all we know.
I heard a nasty rumor that Jake Paul was going to be involved. I was like, dear God, Jake Paul.
I mean, they had like Canelo in a cameo.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when this movie was coming out, Creed 3, and I saw also starring Canelo Alvarez. I'm like, are they gonna fight? Because the Creed's supposed to be a heavyweight, even though in real life, I think in real life, isn't Michael B. Jordan smaller than?
He's a little smaller. He's probably closer to Stallone size than anything else. But okay, because
yeah, but smaller than Canelo, right?
Maybe height wise, he may be a little taller. And depending on, you know, what his physique is like, because Canelo probably walks around at like 190. I'm gonna guess 180, 190. But so the champion in Creed 3, the one who gets knocked out by Jonathan Majors' character, that guy's like a blown up middleweight in real life because he's also a real life boxer. So they're messing with the sizes and stuff. But okay, so yeah, so we're gonna do that in next month. But I think the goal is for you to come back once a month. We'll do a live stream, and then we'll also put the audio on the Patreon. And hopefully, you know, I know we got the KLB who's always looking for you to talk wrestling, and for you and me and maybe even Draven down the line. I'm not promising anything, but Draven and I are also going to be doing a few things. So I just like the fact that, you know, we can go back to the mid to late 2000s where we're just kind of like goofing off doing podcasting, and then now we're doing it like a little bit more for real, and that's like a long relationship. So I'm happy that we can do stuff like this because it allows us to chit chat again, and that's kind of like why I want to do it. It's just I just want to chat with the both of you. But so we're gonna do this hopefully once a month, and we'll figure out the topics. This one will be on Stallone and Rocky. There's not a lot of wrestling. There is World's End, but that's like really late in the month. So, but there may be opportunities for us to go live after a pay-per-view. We'll talk about a pay-per-view. We may have some other topics based on something that you want to talk about. I know, you know, you're interested in some historical topics that we can probably delve into, but the idea is to come back once a month, and we'll do so on the Double G show, not on the Broken News show. But so that's going to be a lot of fun, and you know, hopefully people will tune in and they'll check us out, and people from your World of Geekdom channel, probably
I hope so.
more the World of Geekdom channel than Geekdom 101, but there might be some people who are just like, oh yeah, let's sprinkle in some wrestling and some Dragon Ball, even though I know nothing about Dragon Ball.
Nah, we talk about whatever you want. Like we don't talk about. Look, I talk about Dragon Ball nonstop for 7 years. No, 9 years now. I'm perfectly fine talking about something else. Trust me. I'm wearing the hat because it looks good, but trust me, I can take a break from talking about Dragon Ball.
Did you do your World of Geekdom recap already?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I tried to do it quick. I tried to do it quick because I wanted to hear the press conference. I was wondering if Punk was actually going to be at the press conference, but he wasn't. They kept him off of it, which was smart because they're gonna pull the trick where they're gonna build up his first time on television. I don't know if it'll be this Monday, but they're gonna pull the trick where they're gonna have Punk come out and cut a promo, and that's gonna be something. I want to talk to you about that because I was going to talk to you about that before we closed out.
Yep.
I feel like, and this is me looking at this objectively, he's going to have to talk about AEW, not necessarily by name, but you know how Punk is when he cuts these promos. He gets to kind of say whatever he wants.
Yep.
And he doesn't have to talk about it by name, but he can talk about how, I came back to the business thinking, I don't know, something to the effect of like, I came back to a place that I thought was going to be something.
I think he's shitting on AEW. I think so.
No, I think so too. But how much is he shitting on it? Is he going to just go all out and just actually call Tony Khan an idiot on WWE television? Or is he going to scale it back?
If I was him,
mm-hmm.
I would be very thankful for the opportunity, but I would definitely say, there's a reason why WWE is the big league, because just.
But Garrett, this guy's been shitting on them for
I know.
years.
He's gonna have to eat some crow.
He's gonna have to eat some shit. He's gonna have to pull a Luke Skywalker from Rise of Skywalker. I was wrong. He's gonna have to.
Okay. So we'll get out of here in a second, but. First promo on Raw. Is it on the stage? Crisscross applesauce?
No, I think it's going to be in the ring.
In the ring?
I think so. Yeah, it'll be like Cody's first promo, yo.
Okay.
Now, if he says there's a reason why Cody Rhodes is here, if he says that, it's like, or maybe his gimmick is he'll be the EVP hunter. Maybe his next goal is to go after Cody. You're the last one left I haven't put my hands on.
Okay, so for those watching on YouTube or listening on the free feed, we have the Patreon, patreon.com/FightGameMedia. Shows like this that I do cross-pollinate, it's going to show up on the Patreon first. There's going to be no ads. It's clean. It'll go up. We put everything else up secondary in YouTube in the free feed. So if you are listening to this on the free feed or watching on YouTube, check out the Patreon. Danny is going to, the audio for those shows that I'm doing with Danny will be on the Patreon as well. If you like podcasts better than video shows. So, all right.
Always a good time.
So World of Geekdom, Geekdom 101 is where you can find D. And what is your Twitter handle again? Emperor
Big D. Yeah, that's been my Twitter handle since like 2009 when I first made it.
At Emperor Big D.
I wanted to change it. On X, I wanted to change it to at Geekdom 101, but some dickhead took it like years ago, so I can't do anything about it.
Just offer him like $100 or something.
I can't. He abandoned the account. He's not on there anymore.
You gotta hit up Elon.
I've tried, man. I'm not at his level yet. Maybe someday.
All right. Thanks to everybody for checking us out. I like doing these kind of like super reactive, instant reaction things, and thanks to Danny for being available so quickly. For D, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.